All right, so we're starting our recording. Hello, everyone. This is our September Hunger Free Communities quarterly meeting, and I think we're still waiting for a few people to stream in. I'm Minerva Delgado. Hopefully, you all know me by now, and I'm going to go ahead and just share our agenda on the screen. So today, we'll be reviewing. Oops, that's incorrect. We had wanted to review USDA's food security report, but USDA has let us know that won't be out until late October. So instead, we'll be looking at the census poverty report today. And when that food security report is out, we'll take a look at that at our next meeting. We also want to do some breakouts. We were hoping for regional breakouts, but we don't know that we're going to have quite a neat number of breakouts with regional. But we'll do breakouts. The purpose of the breakout rooms is just to have people get to know each other a little bit better. As a community of practice, we think it would be great for you all to get to know each other and the work that you're all doing. And so you can start to develop relationships and synergies around the work that you're doing in your own communities. And then finally, we'll end with some updates, including some policy updates about what's happening today in Congress, with the potential government shutdown. We'll talk a little bit about our summit and answer any other questions you might have. So I do want to take, so I know you all know me, Minerva, but depending on how many folks we have on, it looks like we have a fairly small group. So I think I'll ask everyone to introduce themselves, and your name and the organization and state you're coming in from. And I'd like to actually start with Aaliyah. Some of you have met Aaliyah through some of the work she did with us as an Emerson Hunger Fellow, but she's now on staff as our Hunger Free Communities Associate, and we're just so thrilled to have her working with us at the Alliance. Aaliyah, you want to say hi?
Sure, yes. Hi, everyone. So nice to meet you if I haven't met you already. And I'm excited to be working with you all further in the future, but very excited to be back with the Alliance. And I do think that I've met a decent amount of you all because of the community engagement series. So it's just good to say hello again.
So I'll go ahead and call on you in terms of how I see you on my screen. So let's start with Alex.
Hi, thanks, Minerva. Hi, everyone. I'm Alex Klug. I'm the Assistant Director at Hall Hunger Initiative. I'm based in Ohio, and we are founded by Ambassador Tony Hall. He was a former congressman in our region. He traveled all around the world looking at global food insecurity, certainly closely linked to poverty. And then he took a lot of that work back home. So we have a regional focus in Southwest Ohio, really looking at regional food justice issues here. And I think Mark, our director, is here too.
Yeah, Mark, why don't you go ahead?
Mark Willis, with All Hunger and everything Alex said.
Thanks, Mark. It's good to see you. Jackie?
Good afternoon. I'm Jackie DiCarlo from Manna Food Center. We're based in Maryland outside of DC, and very glad to be here, although I do apologize because I'll be leaving at 2:30 our time.
No worries.
But I will read any notes or the recording.
Appreciate it. Jill?
Hi, I'm Jill Ambule. I'm the coordinator for the Creating a Hunger-Free North Dakota Coalition, as well as the Cass and Clay Hunger Coalition in the Fargo-Moorhead area.
Welcome, Jill. Joseph?
Hello, I'm Joseph Kendrick. I'm the data analyst and researcher for the San Diego Hunger Coalition. So you might know Anahid, our CEO, a little bit better, but she can't make it, so she sent me just to kind of see what everybody's up to, and I might have to hop off a little bit early, but happy to be here.
Thank you, Joseph. Really appreciate it. Luke?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, I am driving. I'm almost to my office, so I'll be making a switch here soon. But my name is Luke Elzinga. I am the Policy and Advocacy Manager at the Des Moines Area Religious Council in Des Moines, Iowa. We're an interfaith organization, and our primary focus the last 50 years has been a food pantry network. So we've got 14 different pantries in our network. Also do a mobile food pantry program, home delivery program, and then I do a lot on the advocacy side of things. I'm also the board chair of the Iowa Hunger Coalition. So kind of here wearing both of those hats. So thanks.
Welcome, and please drive safely. Yvonne?
Hi, my name's Yvonne Montoya. I'm on the Hunger Free Communities Advisory Board. I'm also with Devoya CDC in Kansas and California, and trying to address the issues of food insecurity and increasing the SNAP enrollment here in Kansas.
Wonderful, thank you. Did I miss anyone? I think I got everyone. Okay, so I'm going to jump into the poverty census report and just kind of do an overview of what we learned from the Census Bureau last month. Slideshow, and I will be sharing these slides with you. So don't feel like you need to write stuff down. But I do want to share with you some of the findings of the census report that came out last month. Well, actually earlier this month, I should say. And this is the annual census report that looks at, and it's looking at poverty in 2022. And so, there's always sort of a year lag in these statistics. But the big picture, which is probably not surprising to any of us, is that poverty increased sharply in 2022 in the United States, particularly among children, as living costs rose and federal programs that provided aid to families during the pandemic expired. So that's the big picture takeaway from the census report. And while I'm going through my slides, I can't see folks, so feel free to just kind of speak out if you have a question while I'm going through this, and I'm happy to pause and answer your question. And I think that when we talk about the poverty rate in the US, it's really important to understand that we're talking about two different measures. One is the official poverty rate that we have historically seen, and that is defined, it defines poverty by comparing pre-tax money income to a national poverty threshold adjusted by family composition. So we're all familiar with the poverty threshold by household income. And then the other measure that we'll be spending a lot of time on today is the supplemental poverty measure. And the supplemental poverty measure doesn't replace the official poverty measure. It's usually presented side by side, but it extends the official poverty measure by accounting for different government programs that are just designed to assist low-income families, but are not included in the official poverty measure, because the official poverty measure doesn't look at government programs like SNAP, like Social Security, like other kinds of benefits that families receive. And it also doesn't take into account geography. It doesn't take into account expenses that are coming out of household budgets, like federal and state taxes, work expenses, and medical expenses. So the supplemental poverty measure, I believe, and I think a lot of people would argue, is a much more accurate definition of poverty in the US. So the official findings, the main findings for this year, first looking at the official poverty rate, and this is pretty much all I'll say about the official poverty rate. The official poverty rate in 2022 was at about 11.5% of the population and almost 38 million people in poverty. That rate and the number in poverty was not significantly different from 2021. So if you're looking at just the official poverty rate, the news is, oh, not a big difference from 2021, pretty much static. However, as we discussed, the supplemental poverty measure really is a much more accurate measure. It takes into account government benefits and household expenses in a way that the official poverty measure doesn't. And so the news for the supplemental poverty measure is very different. And what we find is that the SPM, I'm just going to use the acronym for supplemental poverty measure, that rate in 2022 was 12.4%, which was an increase of 4.6 percentage points from 2021. So that was a significant increase. And this is the first increase in the overall SPM since 2010. So this is big news. And all the groups that are measured through the supplemental poverty measure experienced increases in their poverty rates between 2021 and 2022, which is also significant. So this was sort of cross-cutting phenomenon, seeing this supplemental poverty measure poverty rate increase across all groups. And I'm going to go over really two major groups. One is children. And so the supplemental poverty measure, SPM, found that the child's poverty rate more than doubled from 5.2% in 2021 to 12.4% in 2022. And so this was one of the most significant findings, more than doubling of the child poverty rate. And this actually represents a return to the pre-pandemic SPM child poverty rate, because it is not statistically different from the 2019 rate, which was 12.6%. So, we saw a significant increase in child poverty. Then we actually saw a decrease in child poverty during the pandemic with all of the government supports that were related to the pandemic. And then as those supports went away, an increase again in child poverty. So children, if we're looking at age groups for the SPM, children had the largest increase among the various age categories. And again, this is driven by the expiration of the expanded refundable child tax credit, as well as the expiration of stimulus payments. So that had a significant impact on families and children. The next group I want to talk about is just different racial ethnic groups. And so the supplemental poverty rate increased for all race and Hispanic origin groups between 2021 and 2022. And so not surprisingly, it's consistent with other data sets we've seen, non-Hispanic white individuals had the lowest supplemental poverty rate of all the groups at 9.1%, while they did experience an increase since 2021. So all of the groups experienced an increase since 2021. Asian individuals have a supplemental poverty rate of 11.6%. Black individuals have a supplemental poverty measure rate of 17.2%. Hispanic individuals have a poverty rate of 19.3%, and American Indian and Alaska Native individuals saw a poverty rate of 23.2%. And again, each of those groups saw increases of various amounts in terms of poverty rates by race and ethnicity. And then I think the other thing that's really interesting that you don't get in the official poverty measure is that looking at the supplemental poverty measure allows us to see what are the anti-poverty effects of different government programs. Because the supplemental poverty rate is looking at things like Social Security and SNAP and WIC and so many of the programs that we care about, TANF, they're able to actually look at, if we were to remove that government program, what effect would that have on the poverty measure? And so they're able to look at the number of people who are lifted out of poverty in 2022 based on that particular government program. And so not surprisingly, because it is one of the most effective programs we have for lifting people out of poverty. Social Security lifted the most people out of poverty in 2022, and that lifted 28.9 million, almost 29 million people out of poverty. Social Security, of course, is, you know, a broad-based program, and so affects a large percentage of the elderly population. After Social Security, the programs that really had the strongest anti-poverty effects were refundable tax credits, such as the Earned Income Tax Credit and the refundable child tax credit, which was expanded in during the pandemic. That lifted 6.4 million people out of poverty. SNAP lifted 3.7 million people out of poverty. Other non-cash benefits, such as utility assistance, WIC, and school lunch programs, lifted 2 million people out of poverty, primarily children, for most of those programs. And other cash benefits, such as workers' comp or temporary assistance to needy families or general cash assistance and child support received, lifted 1.3 million people out of poverty. So I think this is sort of an interesting data set that we also get from the supplemental poverty measure, is to see what programs really impacted the poverty status of families. And a note on the expanded child tax credit, hopefully you all know this was expanded during the pandemic and then did end in 2021, and someone correct me if I got that wrong. But so that if we look at the year before this particular data set, we would have seen even a higher number of families lifted out of poverty with the refundable tax credits. So we know that that was an extremely effective program in lifting particularly families with children out of poverty. But I think it's good to sort of understand what the impacts of these various programs are. So I think that's the end of the formal presentation. And just happy to answer any questions you might have about the data set. I'll also send around the report that I pulled all of this information from in the follow-up email, so you all have it. So if any of you are sort of, you know, statistical wonks like me want to go through the report, you'll have it as well. But I did pull out what I thought were the most significant highlights out of the report. And also, you know, this is talking about poverty in 2022. You know, presumably this jives with what you've seen in your community, and just would like to hear, you know, from folks if you think this is kind of representative of what you're seeing as well. And I'm happy to stop my share unless folks want to refer back to a specific chart or information. Okay. All right. Any questions on the census report? Again, happy to share that the slides as well as the official report with you all.
I was looking at this last night. We put an advocacy article in our newsletter every week, typically, and this is what I used in promoting the Child Poverty Reduction Act that Casey and Sherrod Brown supported. So I think these numbers can really help us build a case for advocacy.
Thank you. And I think that, yes, this is like, particularly when we're talking about the refundable child tax credit. I mean, we have such ample evidence that this was a really effective measure in lifting families and children out of poverty. So yeah, I would definitely encourage you to use the report. One of the downsides, and for folks who may be familiar with this data set, what I didn't find was sort of like a state-by-state supplemental poverty measure, you know, and what they do present is a graph of a map of the United States, and show where the official poverty measure and the supplemental poverty measure are either the same, or one is higher and one is lower, but it doesn't actually give a state-by-state breakout, which I thought was unfortunate. But does anyone happen to know if when they put out this poverty report, if they do put out state-based data?
Not sure on this specific one, but I know sometimes those come at a later date. Like the more full data sets.
Okay, that's helpful. We can try to keep an
But
eye.
I was also going to share, I think this data is really in line with what we've seen at our food pantry network. So we produce a report called Portrait of a Food Pantry Visitor, Data, Demographics, and Disparities. And we're getting ready to release our report for this past fiscal year. And we've seen a big increase in the number of children that we're assisting through our food pantry network. And I think another, you've mentioned the child tax credit, the stimulus payments. I think those SNAP emergency allotments really helped a lot of people. Our numbers went down during the pandemic. I think really because of those benefits, along with some of those other ones you mentioned. So we've definitely seen similar trends where we're back to breaking records now, and we're seeing a ton of new people, a higher percentage of children. I think, in Iowa, we do not have school meals for all. We're back to kind of pre-pandemic policies in that regard too. So, and then the other thing I was going to add, I think that data you shared on how effective different programs are at reducing poverty, that data is really good to have for organizations that think, around anti-hunger. SNAP is an easy connection to make at that program's effectiveness and reducing poverty. But pointing to numbers like Social Security, and helping make the case for organizations to be advocating for things around Social Security tax policy, like child tax credits. Having that data really, I think, helps people within organizations make the case that this is important advocacy work to be doing that's not, mission creep, that's relevant to anti-hunger work.
Thank you. Thank you for that. All right. Any other comments before we move into our next agenda item? Awesome. So happy to share those materials with you after the session. What we wanted to do now was to get into, we were going to do breakout rooms, but honestly, we're a small enough group. I think we kind of stay in this group, and just wanted to help you all start to get to know each other a little bit better and your organizations by just sharing some information about the work that you're doing. And so I know Aaliyah had, I don't know, Aaliyah, if you want to put in the chat, Leah put together just a series of prompts, questions that folks can, when they're kind of addressing, this looks like a lot. But,
Sorry, let me number those real quick.
So like just to each organization can just take, no more than 5 minutes and share their mission. So you don't have to answer all these questions, but one is like, what's your mission statement? Explain the work that you're doing to reduce hunger in your community, or share a strategy that you've used that has had a positive impact on your work. You can also share an obstacle that you're running into while trying to work on your hunger issues, and what's one way that you can help support the network, maybe a resource that you have, a toolkit, or some of the information that could help others in the network. So those are just some ideas of prompts. You can answer some of these, all of these, or other questions just in terms of helping folks get to know you and your organization. So and again, we'll watch the time, ask folks not to take more than 5 minutes to make sure that we don't run out of time. But if Mark, I'm looking at you on the screen. Do you want to get us started with Hall Hunger Initiative?
Sure. We have a broad mission. I've worked with a lot of organizations where I don't like our mission statement. I actually like our mission statement. It is working with community partners to build a just and sustainable food system. And two key parts. One is working with community partners. We're very small, just Alex and I, and I've got a student who does our social media. So we can't do it all ourselves. So bringing partners together strengthens the effort, but it also is the only way we can get anything done. But the other thing is that we work around the food system. We're not like some of the groups here that distribute food. We try to support a system where eventually we will get to a point where everybody can grow or buy their own food. That's the direction we want to move in. The idea that we really have attached to is that we don't need to empower people. They all have their own power. We need to remove the barriers so they can use their power. And so we have taken projects like we have an ID project now for immigrants. People came here with no documents, so we are helping them get ID cards so they can get jobs, so they can use a food pantry, pick up their kids at school. And if they get pulled over by the police, it's a ticket instead of a deportation. So that one little thing removes so many barriers for folks. It's a really, really effective, small but powerful program. We do small micro grants of $3,000 to $5,000. We've helped a number of local farmers buy things they need to get started. Helped buy a van for a food pantry, things like that. Again, it's removing barriers. So that's really I guess, a strategy that we've used to inform our work. The one way we could maybe be supportive, we do our weekly newsletter, and this week I was spending actually hours last night reading that report and articles about it. So I have some research in today's article. So if anybody wants to be on our newsletter, it's free, no salesman will call. And sometimes there's good information in there about legislation that you might want to promote too. The more we can jointly do that, the stronger we are as a network.
Thanks, Mark. And we'll make sure we get information from you about how people can sign up for your newsletter as a follow-up to this
Okay.
meeting. Thanks so much. Luke, do you want to go next? Oh, I'm sorry. I see Jill has a hand up. Go ahead, Jill.
That was by accident. Being as I know Luke has to leave a little bit early, you can definitely go to him first.
Thanks. Go ahead, Luke.
So are we picking one of these four?
Yeah, you pick one of them. I mean, it's a lot, but just
Yeah.
to folks get to know.
So I'm gonna share. I'll choose number 4. Just because I saw Katie's face pop up for a second. I have worked in Iowa to take these state level reports that the state puts out and essentially pull those into a spreadsheet and then make a Tableau dashboard visualization. And I've done this in Iowa, and I've been working with folks at Hunger Free Vermont to do the same thing in Vermont. So I will put this out there as a resource and support to other states. I actually have a lot of state data that's easily accessible already. And in the states that I don't have it, I kind of need someone in the state to probably submit FOIA requests and potentially have some resources to do that. So I'll just put that out there as a potential resource. If you do any SNAP advocacy in your state, it kind of depends on what your state is putting out, but there's other data sources I think that are under tapped at the state level. So
Thanks,
yeah, and I'll
Luke.
put my email in here too.
Yeah, please do. But also give us for those who may not be familiar, the DMARC 101.
Yeah, for sure. So we, like I said, we're an interfaith organization. So that means we work with people of all faiths, no faith. But really what we're about is coming together to meet basic human needs. And the primary way we have done that is our food pantry network for almost 50 years. So we have a network. We only own and operate one pantry. These others are all partnerships. So we're providing them all their food for free. We kind of we're not exactly a food bank. We're not exactly a food pantry. We do own and operate our own food pantry and our mobile program and delivery program. But the others, we kind of act as like a collective purchaser. We do have a warehouse. But then we are also, I really appreciated your comments, Mark. You know, we don't believe we're going to solve hunger by just providing more and more food to more and more people in need. We are really serious about, you know, shortening the line at food pantries, eventually putting ourselves out of a job, at least as it relates to hunger. But the thing about hunger is that it doesn't exist in a vacuum. You know, it's connected to all these other issues of poverty. So that's the work that I get to do. I'm kind of a one-person advocacy team here, and then also work with a lot of statewide coalitions. So we're part of the Iowa Food System Coalition and do a lot of work with the Farmers Union and other groups around, you know, not only policies that will help, you know, reduce food insecurity, but, you know, look at transforming our food systems to one that better supports the health of our people and planet. So
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much. Jill, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I guess the one that I am choosing is number 3. So share the biggest obstacle you've run into while reducing hunger in your community. So like those of you in Iowa and places like that, we are a very, very rural state. And while it seems obvious that just driving food to different locations can solve hunger problems in rural communities, that's not always true. We have crippling winters that shut down our interstate for days. We have communities that go without power, things like that. So I would say that's definitely one of our biggest obstacles. I am housed under Great Plains Food Bank, and one of their new initiatives this year is to outfit a truck for rural distribution out in those more food desert areas, particularly on indigenous lands and within tribal communities. And the amount of excitement that's been generated just from the discussion of this is really empowering and enlightening. So we're looking forward to moving that forward. I know we have a representative meeting with some folks from Texas next week. They've successfully rolled out this program in numerous locations, and we think we have a lot to learn from them. But yeah, I was just in Iowa for the first time last weekend for a baseball tournament, and you guys probably have very similar rural obstacles that we do. It just, there aren't enough people, there aren't enough vehicles, there aren't enough everything to get this where it needs to be. And I think echoing what was said earlier, we're seeing an increase of the people utilizing services close to higher than pandemic levels, while at the same time seeing a decrease in the amount of food that we're receiving through donations. So it's just always this dance between too much, too little, and trying to figure it all out.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks for sharing. And if anyone has ideas for Jill, please feel free to share. And really appreciate you being with us today. Katie, hi. We haven't met, Minerva. So glad you can join us today from Hunger Free Vermont. Do you want to just share a little bit about what you guys are up to?
Sure. So we have a new mission that this might be the first time I'm saying it out loud to other people who are not part of Hunger Free Vermont. So I did have to like look it up on our network. So it's kind of like our old mission, but with a little bit new flair. So it's to end the injustice of hunger for everyone, prioritizing the people most affected by hunger to make permanent systemic change. And I guess broadly, we really like operate on the kind of a virtuous cycle in many ways. So trying to understand directly from folks trying to use federal nutrition programs, what the barriers are, and then using that information to tailor the way that we talk about them, as well as using that information to inform the ways that we want to go about trying to change the way that those programs operate and how we evaluate them, and then kind of constantly like going in that feedback loop. So this past year, we passed the Universal School Meals Bill in Vermont, which was very exciting. And kind of one of those things I remember when I started at Hunger Free Vermont, like 12 years ago, it just feeling like such a like pie in the sky dream, and it actually came true. So it's pretty amazing when you can feel like you can be there for those full circle moments where you're like, oh, I thought this was something we just talked about because we have a lot of high ideals, and it actually like came to pass, which was pretty awesome. And so that was a state level advocacy, but using federal programs. And we did a lot of coalition building and really trying to leverage every part of the strong network that we've built over the past kind of 30 years as an organization. And so we don't always have huge, massive, lofty legislative priorities like that, but one of the pieces we were really interested in working with Luke on and getting some more data is really trying to understand, like, do we approach a SNAP minimum benefit bill at the state level like many other states are? So really just trying to think about kind of what permanent things can we put in place that leverage as many federal dollars as we can, because I hear the Iowa folks, we're a rural place too, and I don't ever have economies of scale working in our favor, and that really creates a ton of different challenges for us. And I mean, really, we just need to put more money in people's pockets so that they can be able to, afford the food that they want and need to eat. So, there's a million other things that I could talk about, but in terms of what we're up to, I feel like I don't need to hog the airwaves either.
Thank you, Kathy. Really appreciate that. In terms of the SNAP minimum benefit work, or, sort of where you are in terms of that, conceptualizing that, have you all spoken to Hunger Free New Jersey? That is something that they've been able to do there. And
Yeah, I think
Lisa Pitt's there.
I would say I'm not sure if we've talked to them, but we would love to.
Yeah, so that's definitely a connection we can make.
That would be great. Yeah. Yeah, and really, I mean, as you get into the underpinnings of it all, it's just, can we change the federal poverty level and that whole definition? Because that gets in the way in so many, from messaging to practical, actual getting people money that makes a difference in their lives.
Yeah, I mean, as I was doing the report out on the poverty report, it's so frustrating because the official poverty measure, you see how inadequate it is, but it's still the basis of all the benefits.
Yeah.
And so I think that might be
when you look back at the history of it too, it's just absurd, like it just, the whole thing is built on a house of lies, basically.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. And but that could be another campaign that we all work on
Yeah,
collectively,
absolutely.
right? Thanks for that, Kathy. Joseph, do you want to talk about what's happening at Hunger Free San Diego?
Sure, yeah. So I'll read our mission statement. The Hunger Coalition leads coordinated action to end hunger in San Diego County, supported by research, education, and advocacy. So we are not on the ground. We're not distributing food either. Mostly doing research and advocacy. One good example of that, I think, is our Hunger Free San Diego Advisory Board, where we get together with a lot of the major food banks and pantries in the area, the senior providers, the government agencies, and we try to coordinate some sort of action around what we can do, and also coordinate research. So I'm the data analyst, and a lot of our research is surrounding nutrition insecurity, which deals a lot with those federal poverty levels. We're a little bit different in California because the income thresholds are a little bit higher. So we actually try to estimate anybody that is nutrition insecure as under 200% of the federal poverty level. That also is in line with who's eligible for SNAP in California and things like that. So once we have that, we also try to track all the food assistance that's going out, mostly with that advisory board. We try to coordinate with whoever is giving a good amount of food and try to get their data directly. And then after that, we calculate like a meal gap, how many meals are missing in San Diego County month to month. So I'm about to finish up our issue brief on our March 2023 data. And that gives the number of meals missing and number of meals missing without those emergency allotments that were actually still going on in March here in California. So that's kind of the research side of it. We also do research on SNAP, quite a lot of research on SNAP. It's like 63% of people that are eligible for SNAP are enrolled in California. So a lot of our organization's focus is on trying to get people enrolled in SNAP. So we think that's kind of the best way to get food into people's hands consistently. And then other than that, we have a few programs. Since we have universal free meals here in California, we also have a program dedicated to trying to increase participation in school meals and trying to increase funding for school meals, because after that implementation, it was a little rocky here in California. A lot of school districts didn't have like capacity to feed everybody. So we're trying to get people on the community eligibility provision through our SNAP in Schools initiative, getting people enrolled in SNAP, or getting kids enrolled in SNAP to try to increase school funding through direct certification of those schools. And the last thing I'll mention is our Hunger Free Navigator program is pretty unique. We also have we have a couple people that will present kind of where food assistance could be found in San Diego County. So we have like a resource flyer and a 90-minute training that tries to connect people with like the ability to be able to refer people to any type of food assistance we have here in California, whether that's WIC or SNAP or just food banks and pantries or anything like that. I think that's it's a good example of one thing that I think is really helpful and unique in our coalition.
So thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
Can I ask a quick question, Joseph?
Yeah.
So I understand that San Diego passed a law about no food waste.
Mm-hmm.
How's that going?
To be honest, I do not know. I don't think it's been super profound. We do have kind of a policy advocacy department here, but I'm not the expert on that. Sorry, I'm not sure.
Well, that's okay. That tells me that it, like you said, hasn't been real profound, or you'd know.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Awesome. And finally, Yvonne, who is one of our Hunger Free Community Advisory Council members. So she's not here representing an organization, but in her personal mission to end food security. Maybe Yvonne, you could tell us a little bit about what you're up to.
Thank you, Minerva. Yes, again, my name's Yvonne Montoya. I go between Kansas and California. We have my co-founder and I, we started Devoya Community Development Corporation. Our services are in Kansas and California. Primarily right now, we're focusing on Kansas, and we're working with the Department of Children and Family Services to increase those training organizations to increase SNAP enrollment assistance. Right now, there are only 2 partners in the state of Kansas to handle all of Kansas to do SNAP enrollment. So I had approached the Department of Children and Family Services to start a pilot program. They approved it, and now we are finally getting our grants written and established. We've got a few partners that will also be supporting us financially to go out and train nonprofit organizations on enrollment assistance. So we are tied with, Kansas is tied with California in lowest enrollment in SNAP. So we are trying to increase that, increase partnerships and increase those who are trained in assisting with enrollment, not determining eligibility, but with the enrollment process itself.
Thanks, Yvonne. It's so nice to hear from all of you. I'm always constantly amazed at the breadth of work that's happening, and just the amazing just all of the different activities that are happening. And I know that, this is such a powerful network in terms of all of the various, innovative and very interesting work that's happening around food security. So it's always a thrill to hear what you all are up to. So thank you for that. So in terms of just kind of like moving forward, I did want to just share, we have an advocacy alert out today related to a potential shutdown. Hopefully, I think most of you are on my mailing list. If not, someone in your organization basically received an action alert today, basically saying that today is the day to call your members in the House and to really encourage them to vote no on a rule that's coming up around appropriations for agriculture funding. And unfortunately, the rule is written in such a way that if it's passed, there would be a 14% cut in discretionary funding across the board for USDA. And so we're trying to defeat that rule. And if the rule is passed, then trying to get members in the House to vote against the agriculture appropriations bill itself. So, you know, we're just really concerned about this because of the potential cuts that are engaged, even though WIC was actually carved out to be protected from these cuts. National WIC Association is a member of the Alliance to End Hunger, and we've had extensive conversations with them, and they tell us they are also opposing this particular rule and this particular bill because flat funding for WIC will definitely not meet the current caseload needs. WIC is severely underfunded, and so what we're calling for is for there to, and this is all a distraction from passing a continuing resolution to fund the Congress passed this week. So because passing these funding bills won't actually resolve the issue of the looming government shutdown. So we're trying to get folks to give a message to Congress that they want to see an extension of a continuing resolution, that we want to fully fund WIC to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the caseload. We don't want to see wait lists. We don't want to see sort of a reversion to a time when you know, folks who were eligible for WIC could not receive those benefits. So we have that action alert out there. I know some of you, I heard from Hunger Free Vermont that you guys are doing some advocacy on this. Luke, I think you all are doing some advocacy, and I heard from some other folks. But first of all, thank you for the advocacy you're doing already. Really appreciate it. And just, you know, happy to take any questions about what's happening today. So today there are important votes on the House floor on this rule, as well as the agriculture appropriations bill. So we're just urging a no vote on both of those and calling for a clean continuing resolution to fund the government passed this week. And you know, one of the challenges I think we're having is this messaging can get very convoluted because it is so inside baseball in terms of, you know, these appropriations rules and, you know, to self-executing rule. It's just, it can get very hard to explain to the average person who's not watching C-SPAN every minute, you know, sort of what's going on up here. But thank you. Yeah, thanks, Kathy, for your Katie, sorry. Thanks for that comment. All right, if there are no questions on that, the other things going on with us at the Alliance is we are very close to finalizing our program for the Hunger Free Community Summit, which is coming up November 1st. And I know some of you will be featured speakers, so I'm very excited about that. And so we just, once we have that program up on the conference website, we'll send out another, you know, just informational email to let people know that they can see the program. They can go ahead and register if they haven't already. So we're pretty excited about that. And that's coming up on November 1st, which sounds like it's really a long way away, but really isn't in terms of just planning for an event like this. So Aaliyah and I are working furiously to make sure that we get all our ducks in a row and sort of finalize all the conference content. So hopefully you all are planning on joining us on November 1st virtually for that. Oh, thanks. So so unless there are any other questions, either on sort of what's happening in terms of action alerts or what's happening with the conference, I think we can, happy to wrap up. If there are no other questions, or comments at this point.
Sorry, just one quick question. Minerva, did you mention that you're considering doing the conference in person again next year?
Yeah, so one of the things that came out of, we did a strategic planning process earlier this year around this particular Hunger Free Communities program. And one of the things that came out of it is that folks really want to be able to network. And so they miss that opportunity at the conference, the in-person networking. And I think anyone who's planned the virtual conference since the pandemic or even before will tell you that that's the one thing we just can't replicate. We can't replicate that feeling of being in a room with people and just getting to meet people. It's just not possible. So thanks, Luke. And so one of the things that we were talking about is potentially going back to an in-person conference next year. Now, because we are doing the virtual conference this year, we are thinking about and planning a series of regional convenings. So it may be that we still do a virtual conference next year, but we supplement that with regional convenings, right? Because we do want people to get to know each other and meet in person. So we haven't quite figured out that formula. So maybe it'll be an in-person conference with a virtual option. Maybe it'll be a virtual conference with in-person convenings. But we definitely want to be able to get to, thanks, Katie. Yeah, so we wouldn't be having a virtual convening. I'm sorry, we wouldn't be having an in-person convening until like the first quarter of 2024. And I think we're talking about doing it first in the South, but we'll move it around the country. So the idea being, we do want to be able to get folks together in a room in person. So next year we may go back to an in-person conference. The challenge then is, where do we hold it? And it might be more convenient for some people on the West Coast or on the East Coast, and that's always the challenge, right, with an in-person conference. So, but this year it will definitely be virtual, and we'll be planning some in-person convenings starting the first quarter of next year.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah. Any other questions? And so just to address the putting travel money in your budgets, part of what we're trying to do is raise money for these convenings so that we can supplement travel budgets, right? So that's part of the reason why we're not just announcing one tomorrow. It's like we need to raise some money, understanding that if we want to gather people, that we probably need to help with travel budgets and accommodations and whatever that takes to get people together. So so that's something we're working on. Any other questions before we wrap? Well, thank you so much for taking an hour out of your day today to spend it with us. We really, really appreciate it. And our next meeting is not until December, so we'll see you next at the Hunger Free Community Summit on November 1st. So thanks, everybody. We'll be in touch via email.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a good one.
Have a good week.